Hello, everyone. Welcome to Go Publish Yourself, an Ingram Spark podcast. I'm Robin Cutler, the director of Ingram Spark.
And I'm Justine Bilo, and I manage the author acquisitions program at Ingram Spark. Hi, Robin.
Hey, Justine. So today we're going to be talking about print versus electronic or ebook, which is one of the questions that we get asked a lot about. So I think this is a really good topic for us to talk about today.
Or should we say print versus e or print and e? I think that's the bigger issue here, Robin.
I totally agree with that, Justine. I believe it should be print and e, and we can talk, about why that is so. But let's first talk about, just so that people know this, what today are the most popular formats that authors are publishing in?
Yeah, I think for the print market, especially in genre fiction, you're really looking at the 5x8 and 6x9 paperback. Those are your real tried and true trim sizes for the paperback book, right?
Yes, and I would totally agree. I would say to the tune of about, 60-70% of all books, I think, that are published are exactly those trim sizes and also as a paperback.
Yeah, agreed. And the reason why everyone puts their books in those sizes is because booksellers really like it that way. When you walk into a bookstore or Barnes Noble and all the books on the shelf are the same size and it looks really, really nice and the OCD person in you jumps for joy, that is totally why everyone does it that way. It's so that everything's standard, right?
And even in people's homes now, you'll see books arranged even by color on a bookshelf, which to me is a little offensive. Like I would never think about organizing my books in that way, but that's fine in terms of interior design.
I totally found out this weekend that you can buy books by the foot and by color from the Strand. Come to find out. For those purposes.
See, I totally don't get that, but to each their own. But definitely in terms of genre, paperbacks fit really well what we see in fiction, also in nonfiction, romance, mystery especially. Don't you agree, Justine?
Yes, mystery, it's all about the genre paperback, 5x8, 6x9, same with romance. But also in those genres, people love the mass market paperback. When you walked into the grocery store back in the day and they had the little mass market paperbacks, the ones that the Harlequin novels that you used to steal from underneath your mom's bed. Yeah, those have made, or they've kind of never gone away, but they're kind of making a resurgence. And it's at 4.25 by 7 trim size. Those are totally coming back. So you have that thicker book, and those are also have a place on the bookshelf for sure. And we print them, by the way. We totally we totally do that trim size.
It's a great beach book size.
Yes.
They fit in your purse even.
Yeah, I have very strong opinions about beach books and what people want to read on the beach. I think that the hardcover really has a place on the beach because you won't ruin a hardcover on the beach as much as you will a paperback. The water from the bathing suit really just ruins a paperback.
Well, Justine, when I was in Jamaica a few months ago, I really like to look and see what people are reading on a beach. And what I was really surprised and kind of thrilled about was so many young men that were reading hardcovers. I could not believe it.
Wow, go men. I'm so proud of them. That makes my heart sing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So let's talk about hardcovers and why someone should not only think about putting their book into a paperback, but also a hardcover. So
Well,
why do you think, beside taking your book to the beach as a hardcover, what else, why else would someone think this is a good idea?
personally, I'm a hardcover junkie. I love a hardcover. And I leave for vacation tomorrow, and I've got 3 hardcovers in my bag. And my boyfriend thinks I'm nuts for schlepping them all the way to Hawaii with me. But, it's what I like to read. And I think they look nice on a bookshelf. They have the durability. And I just love feeling the hardcover in my hands. It's the tactile experience. I just really love the hardcover. But from a more practical standpoint, I think that the libraries love the hardcovers
Mm-hmm.
because they are durable. They can go to all of the patrons and not get torn up and put through the ringer as much, I think that they really stand the test of time.
So that's a really good point, Justine. So if you really are wanting to see your book, on a library shelf or to have a library consider it, you really do have to make your book available as a hardcover. So that's just kind of ground zero, for, a library even considering your book.
Yeah, exactly. They really prefer to buy in hardcover.
Okay,
And
so we've covered paperback and hardcovers. So let's talk a little bit about ebooks and why someone should make their book available as an ebook as well. And I talk a lot about this, to different writers groups and organizations that I talk to. And basically my sense about this is you should make your book available in as many formats as you can afford, because you don't really know what your readers, how they prefer to read your content. Don't you agree with that, Justine?
I totally agree. And you also never know where your readers are reading their content. So they could be reading your paperback or hardcover at home, but for their commute in the morning, they want to read on their phone or their tablet that they can just throw in their bag and go. So they could be buying your book in multiple formats and also reading
Mm-hmm.
it in multiple formats. So you just never know. So giving them the option is really, really important.
And especially, around genres, around mystery and romance, I think ebook and certainly authors that publish, especially in romance, know this. I think they're very savvy about, making their books available as e-content, and, because they know that, a lot of their readers prefer that format.
Totally. And I think that with romance in particular, people are still a little ashamed to be reading romance out in the open. 50 Shades of Grey kind of changed that, but you don't want to be reading like the really steamy book with the cover out on the subway. So you tend to read it on the ebook. Also, it's a cost thing for a lot of romance readers. They tend to read really fast and a lot of books. So because the ebook tends to be a little less expensive than the actual paperback or hardcover of the book, they can actually consume the content at a faster rate and, get
Mm-hmm.
their fill of all their favorite authors. So it kind of, it satiates their need for their books.
Yeah, but for the super fan, especially in the romance genre, once a fan meets their author in person, and you just mentioned this yourself, Justine, you kind of want to hold on to those books in a print format. The other thing that our listeners should know is that, even though we're touting electronic and ebooks as being important, the fact of the matter is print is still the dominant formats, especially paperback, but also hardcover. And a lot of fans, want to collect and keep their favorite authors' books on a shelf. So just remember
Totally.
that.
Yeah, a few years ago, we kept hearing print is dead, and that couldn't be further from the truth. Ebook's been stable. It's been doing really great, but print has made a huge comeback, and it's not going away anytime soon.
No, that's right. So we've got a few minutes left here. Let's talk a little bit about children's books,
Ooh,
as
yeah.
being, different formats that you need to consider. What are the dominant sizes that an author needs to think about? Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Justine?
Yeah. So with children's books, typically the sizes that we see are the 11 by 8.5 landscape, which we just rolled out at Ingram, which is really exciting.
Fantastic.
We've been asking for it for years, and our prayers have been answered. It's been great. So, we just rolled that one out, and that's your really typical children's book trim size. And the thing with children's books is that durability, like the library market, is key, because kids are rough on things, right? They're sticking things in their mouths. They're reading a book a million times. So hardcover is really important for children's, because hardcover is going to hold up to reading that book a million times because they love, the princess in that book or what have you. So that's something to keep in mind. The other trim size that we see a lot of is the square book, which is the 8 by 8. Another really great trim size.
I love that one. That one is so fantastic. Not only for the child, because it's a little bit smaller, to handle, but also, when you get in bed with your child, that 8 by 8, when it opens up, it still looks landscape. So that's really lends itself well, to a landscape design without, having to be as bulky. So I just really love that.
Good for bedtime reading. Yeah. And then, and then also the other good thing about the 8 by 8 is that it's easier to throw in a bag. So for the mobile mom, it's also a really nice trim size. And then also the other trim size to consider is just your 8.5 by 11, which is the larger, vertical, children's book size. So that's another one to think about.
And that's probably the most dominant one, I would say, that I see everywhere is the 8.5 by 11.
Yeah, that one's pretty classic, I'd say. So I think the thing to think about is just how you want your story to look and how it's laid out when you're talking to your illustrator.
Yeah, and it's something to keep in mind as a children's book author when you're working with an illustrator, you really need to think about a standard size. You need to think about how that book's going to be oriented before that artwork is done. And so it's a really good idea to look at your cost before you make that decision, because that decision can really impact the overall budget of your book. And I'm a big believer, and I say this a lot, make your book a standard size. It's going to save you a lot of money in the end. And, it's not going to really, have any kind of negative impact on, bringing your book to the marketplace.
Totally. And just remember those bookshelves that I talked about earlier. They got to look good.
So we've about run out of time, Justine. So I invite everyone to follow us on ingramspark.com, sign up for our blog, which I think is one of the best in the self-publishing space. And, just check out our pricing. We have a calculator there that, can do exactly what I was just talking about. Check out your prices before you get too far into your content and how you're going to present it. So, I just want to mention next week, our episode is on the differences between Ingram Spark and CreateSpace. So I know you're all going to want to stay tuned for that. So without further ado, this has been a really great conversation, Justine. I appreciate talking to you today.
Thanks, Robin. This was fun, and talk to you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.